Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, we reach out to uncharted territory by modding our first ever video game console, personally in my lifetime, and also the first time on this channel. We're beginning with the Game Boy Color, a classic system that defined many of our childhoods, mine included. However, there's one holdback for the Game Boy Color that we saw adjusted with things like the Game Boy Advance SP. That's a backlit screen. There's this website called Funny Playing that makes IPS screens for Game Boy Colors, plus new shells, buttons, all these different things. So I thought today I would build the ultimate Game Boy Color. How did I fare? Let's walk you through everything, and I'll show you just how well it went. All right, let's do this. So of course you're gonna need a tri-tip screwdriver. This is required for you to actually open the Game Boy Color itself. It's only a couple of bucks, so don't worry, not a super expensive tool. Speaking of which, you will need not only a Game Boy Color with the hardware inside it, but also a new Game Boy Color shell thanks to Funny Playing. On top of that, Funny Playing is the one providing the screen here in this video, and I'll have all of this linked in the description down below. Last but certainly not least, you're going to be doing a little bit of soldering here, and as someone who's not a soldering expert, do not be intimidated here. I've got you on some tips, but these are the general needs to accomplish this, plus a Phillips head screwdriver. So now you're all set. Just unscrew the back of the Game Boy Color. Upon opening this was one of the first times I've ever pried open tech. I was kind of fascinated to learn the ins and outs of this ancient console. And once you get familiar, you admire it for a second. If you're like me, you're new. You'll see there are 3 Phillips head screwdrivers. One's right at the heart next to the B, and there's one on the right and left. You're going to attack those with the Phillips head screwdriver so that you can loosen the board and eventually remove it. Now, do let it be known that you can use your original Game Boy Color shell if you so desire to. The one that you're seeing here is actually mine from when I was a little kid. However, as I removed the screen here because I did not have a shell from Funny Playing, I decided, oh, I'll just mod my original Game Boy Color. That'll be cool. The screen from Funny Playing is 25% bigger than the original Game Boy Color screen, which is one of the perks they offer. And I could technically file down my original Game Boy Color shell, but I'm no handyman, which is why I thought a tutorial from me would be pretty helpful because I'd find it somewhat relatable because everyone on YouTube seems to be an expert at all this stuff. I'm certainly not. So for me, when I cracked this open, I went, oh man, okay, so it's either file it down or get a new one. I checked the prices online at Funny Playing. The shells are not expensive at all. They will not break the bank. You could get new parts there, like new buttons, new membranes, but you can reuse those from your Game Boy Color, which I did just to save as much money as I could on this as possible, as it was a fun little modding project. But just know, you can modify the screen size for your original Game Boy Color, but I would highly advise against it, especially if you're like me and you're pretty new to all of this stuff. All right, this is the part where some of you can either get a good laugh at me or you can learn from my poor technique. Whichever you decide is completely up to you. So what happens is the Funny Playing screen comes with a installation kit. It's as simple as clicking some ribbon pins together, and then there's 2 little dots at the top, as you can see, start and select. So you're going to solder the wire to the start and select there, and then respectively, you're going to solder to these 2 pins I'm pointing at right here. Very fine, tedious work, right? You can barely see the pins that I'm pointing at, but I know Lock Great Editor is going to zoom in on them, highlight the pins I'm pointing at. The top one is going to be for your select button. The bottom is going to be for your start button. That's how the pins line up. The printing on my board itself actually overlaps one of the pins, so it made it even more difficult for me to see, as well as for you, I imagine, with YouTube video compression. So as you can see here, it's time to take the solder to the board, and oh God, no! This is not good. So I was a Cub Scout growing up. I had my experience with soldering. I overestimated my abilities heading into this, and I absolutely singed the hell out of my board. Not good work here. This is not what you want to do. What you want to do, because my dad came in eventually, as you'll see, he makes a bit of a cameo here. He comes in, he's a woodworker, a handyman, he's a man's man, comes in, he's like, you heat the tip, you put the iron to it, you shake it off, and you get to work on whatever it is. And once he taught me that, suddenly I was a soldering champ. You'll see it later in the video when I start to do some of the power wiring. But here, this ain't it. Avoid doing this at all costs. Did it damage anything? No. Spoiler alert, it all works, but this still isn't a good job, and it's a risky play to take a hot iron and put it to your board. But effectively, hey, we got the job done, right? So let's keep going. So one soldering job is done, one more remains. You can put the board back into your new shell here where everything's all attached. You'll clip a ribbon here at the top, which you'll see has a power and a touch option. Now, you have one wire left to do. It's a C pin here by the power switch for the Game Boy Color, and it'll connect here to PWR, this pin here. Now, in videos I saw online, these two were reversed. I don't know if I got just a bad installation kit. You'll know why I'm wondering that in just a matter of moments. But anyway, I had to stretch my wire across the entire board to reach this. Normally, it's on the closer one, again, from what I've seen online. It's possible I made a mistake. But anyway, really simple soldering job here. You'll see the champ is back. I've returned to form. I've returned to my Cub Scout form here, and I managed to solder this wire together. So I was pretty proud of this one here. After that, it's as simple as taking a little touch sensor that also comes with your Funny Playing kit. It's this little orange thing here, and you're going to solder this one down and then tuck it into the top. What this will allow you to do is pretty much touch the top of your screen and change the brightness levels. I would highly recommend this because the initial screen setting is quite bright. If you're playing, say, at night in the dark or whatever, you may want to adjust that just a little bit. So don't neglect installing this because you don't like soldering. I understand your path of thought, but trust me, it's something you like to avoid. But anyway, after this point, the soldering's done. Congrats. All right, so congrats. The hardest part of all of this is done. It's the race to the finish now. You want to just put that board back inside the Game Boy shell. Make sure when you're putting this all together that everything is fallen properly into place, including the membranes, the buttons. Make sure they're nice and secure so that everything's pushing outward. The reason this is important is because when you put it together, you don't want to make it where you have to press a button really hard for it to register on your newly assembled Game Boy Color. But yeah, just take those old screws, put them all together, and now it's time for the moment of truth. And of course the screen has something wrong with it, right? So when I saw this, I thought to myself, certainly there's no way that because I took the iron to the motherboard, something screwed up with the screen here. Just where I hit it, did I cross any pins? It didn't make sense to me, even though my job there was really sloppy. I ended up doing some research online, and I found out some people recently have made some orders from Funny Playing and have got some botched screens. It apparently has nothing to do with the soldering, and I verified that because, as I said, Dad's making a cameo, so you saw an extra set of hands helping me with the power cable. That's right. So I said, you know what, Dad, real quick, can you pop this open with me? Can we just take a look at my awful soldering job? Do you think this is the cause of it all? His analysis? No, not really. Does my dad work at Nintendo? Definitely not. So I've read online sometimes that these artifacts on the bottom left corner of the screen eventually go away. In my case, they have yet to, but there is no denying that while distracting, this screen looks absolutely incredible. The last touch is taking some of these stickers here and throwing them on the back to give it the most authentic look possible. I at least got this much right here. And then your new, in my case, atomic purple Game Boy Color is assembled. So I fired up Pokemon Gold. I fired up Oddworld Exodus on this. And oh my God, does it breathe new life into these games. The colors are so vibrant and beautiful. I know this comes hot on the heels of the Analog Pocket coming out, but there was nothing more fun than just modifying my childhood Game Boy and turning it into like the ultimate console here. I also think that this Oddworld game is a perfect example of what these new screens can do for these games. Oddworld, you couldn't see the game, man. I don't know how else to put it. You literally could not see this game. It was impossible on the original screen, no matter how much light I put on it. But with this backlight, it breathes so much life into it. And we got to talk about Pokemon Gold. Look, I made a whole video about how I think the nostalgia of Pokemon's tired, but seeing this game reimagined here, almost, oh my gosh, incredible. It's a good feeling. And in hindsight, what is it, like 5-6 steps you got to complete here? And it wasn't difficult. It's just a little tedious on the soldering front. And that's something you just get better at. So I really do recommend this. Now, let's have a chat about my entire experience. And so, here it is. The Game Boy Color. It's crazy being able to hold a somewhat modernized version of it all in my hands when it's all said and done. I don't know, in all reality, how much I'll end up using this now that the whole process is done. I think about things like the Analog Pocket coming out soon, which has Game Boy Color, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance compatibility, plus a backlit screen. And so you don't have to fight through any of this stuff. But this was actually, in the scheme of things, a pretty good budget option. And I hate to use this word for technology because I hear it all too often and it creeps me out a little bit. But there is an intimacy in, personally, for the first time ever, cracking open hardware, especially hardware that defined my childhood, and seeing what it was all made of, learning the ins and outs of it, and knowing, like, hey, I built this thing. And a lot of that's in here is from my childhood, literally. Like the Game Boy Color that we took apart was the one I've had my entire lifetime. And so being able to take that board and put it in here in the first ever Game Boy I owned, I discovered it outside on the ground. And I brought it into my house because I didn't know whose it was. And I had it for a couple of days before I had to give it back. So it's almost a full circle story here, being able to build my first ever atomic purple Game Boy Color and having this beautiful, as we'll see here, backlit screen. It's incredible. My friend lent me his copy of Pokemon Gold here, and just seeing the color and all the life that's been breathed into these games here, as I said earlier, it's amazing. It makes me want to see what else is in the Game Boy Color library. I'm a huge fan of the Game Boy Advance. I've made it known on this channel. It's like my favorite system of all time. But knowing that I've got this now kind of changes the game, pardon the pun. So now that the tutorial's done, some general thoughts are over. I mean, I'm imagining if you clicked on this, you're probably interested to some extent, but should you do it? Yeah, I mean, again, I make it clear throughout this whole video, I'm no handyman. I'm trying to get better at this stuff. I'm trying to learn technology more. And I wanted to document the learning process because in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be a, shout out to a friend, Spawn Wave here. I'm not going to be Spawn Wave and know like, yeah, this board does this, this, and that, and these pins connected this. And like, no, I had to follow a tutorial, memorize it, do it myself. It's a learning process, but it was fun. And I know a lot of noobs out there don't stick their head out because I think of what happened with the Verge and their PC build. Like you risk looking like an idiot, but it's like up front I'm saying, hey, I wasn't crazy good at this. I documented the whole process so you can sort of see what it's like when someone who's not experienced, not perfect at all of this does. And so yeah, I do recommend it. A lot of the equipment required for this isn't cheap. I was lucky enough to already have a soldering iron from when I was younger, and as I said, I was a Cub Scout, so your boy was all prepared on that front, and my dad is a handyman through and through, so a lot of the tools I already owned, but the ones that I had to buy and the ones that I did look up aren't too expensive. Should you buy, say, people will take these Game Boy Colors and make them themselves and then sell them online. It's way cheaper to go the route of making it, especially if you know how to solder. There's no doubt you should take this route. It takes, honestly, if you know what you're doing, not even an hour of your time to crack this thing open. It's 6 screws on the side of the shell. It's another 3 on the board. You pop it open, you solder a total of 3 whopping wires. You put it all back together, make sure it's all firm in place. You turn it on, and boom. Suddenly got yourself a working Game Boy Color that's worth like 200 some odd bucks. And I honestly think when you, especially if you're like me, I already owned a Game Boy Color, right? I already had a Game Boy Color sitting there in my drawer, and I was like, well, I'm never going to use this thing, even though it's a part of my childhood. The back little sticker here was all wrinkled, so there was no, not that I would, but resale value to me. Just knowing something has resale value is valuable to me, right? Knowing you have the rare thing. I know it sounds materialistic, and inherently it is. But it was not doing anything for me. So if you just have a Game Boy Color lying around, it's even cheaper for you because you don't have to buy a working Game Boy Color board and then buy the shell, buy the screen, all that stuff. You can just make it from what you already have. So it's like a $50 project, which again, pretty appreciated for something that comes out to pretty expensive when you go online. Plus, nothing replaces the original Game Boy Color, no matter how many analog pockets are printed. But yeah, just wanted to document the whole experience here for all of you and let you know how it went, which was pretty fun. And we'll definitely be doing in 2022 more modifications. I might try to build another Game Boy Color, maybe the original Game Boy modify. Of course, we're going to do the Game Boy Advance. That'll definitely be next, but maybe not now that I think about it, because I kind of want to make sure I have a good idea of what I'm doing, because I don't want to have this screen issue. I know it's not my fault. Funny Playing's going to be sending me a new one, but it's still disappointing. Like the first time I built this, like, man, was it me? Was it the screen? So we'll know shortly, but fun experience, highly recommended. And let me know if you've done any of this in the comments down below. Fire away. Other than that, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to share this around if anyone plans on modifying their Game Boy. With that, I'll talk with all of you very soon. Peace out.